Discussing Microsoft's Q4 2024 results and how the stock has reacted to the news and also the earnings call that took place a few hours ago. So let's get into that. So to begin with, it looks like Microsoft had reported 64.7 billion, an increase of 15% in revenue. Their operating income was 27.9 billion, an increase of 15%. Their net income was 22 billion, an increase of 10%. So these are the main three metrics that a lot of people look at and use to judge a business and how it's producing and its growth. And if you take a look at Microsoft, they're consistently having double digit beats, which is great. This is a company that's been on the market for over 30 years. They are not a new company experiencing massive growth. So for them to be continually hitting double digit numbers at their size speaks to the leadership that it has and also the great and consistent products that it delivers. Now, if we're taking a look specifically at their full 2024 fiscal results, Microsoft has three main areas of revenue. One is their productivity and business process, which brought in 77.7 billion. Second is their intelligent cloud, which is actually their largest income generating business, which is their Azure, which they heavily invest into, which I'll be speaking to shortly, which brought in over $105 billion for the year. And then also final, their personal computing, which brought in $62 billion for the year. So for a total, the revenue was $245 billion. And last year, it was $211 billion. So this is what I mean when I speak about great companies. Great companies year over year will consistently build on what they're doing. Yes, there may be hiccups here and there, but for the most part, they should continue steadily increasing. And one thing which will help aid in this is having great leadership. Microsoft, I believe, has one of the best leaders as a CEO. If you look at Apple, you look at Tesla, you look at Nvidia, you look at AMD, you look at all of these great companies. Any company that prospers and survives usually has somebody leading it who's innovative, smart, and knows how to get the job done. Now, let's break down what exactly those three areas that Microsoft makes their money from. So, as I mentioned, the first one is productivity and business processes. That is primarily their Office commercial products, Microsoft 360, Excel, subscriptions, Exchange, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams. This is all a lot of commercial businesses. They're entrenched in companies across the world, globally, governments. It's a safe and niche market because it's hard to move $1 billion company's systems overnight. For that to happen, it would have to take years and time. So Microsoft having all of these companies and governments as clients almost guarantees them revenue at all times. The second area, which happens to be the actually largest in revenue, as we just seen on the other screen, is their cloud area. This specifically is their Azure and cloud services, Visual Studios, system centers. This is essentially their AI platform, what they're using to help businesses thrive and scale. This is one of Microsoft's biggest investments, which they do believe will pay dividends down the road. So a lot of the work is being done now, which we will see, I believe myself as well, in the future and reap the benefits. And the final area is personal computing. That has to do with their Windows products, gaming, Xbox. They recently purchased Activision, their search and news and advertising, Bing, Microsoft News, Microsoft Edge. That's essentially what the personal computing system or product is. Now, if we take a look at their guidance for going forward for next year, they essentially mention growth in most areas, a small decline in Office commercial product revenue, they believe. But if you look at the intelligent cloud area, they believe to have decline in low digits for their server products revenue and their enterprise and partner services revenue. This being Microsoft's biggest area of income, their biggest investment area, seeing decline in low digits is not favorable to market and investors. If you're personally asking me, that's not something to worry about, but the market, institutions don't like to hear anything about declines or slowing in growth. Now, if we take a look at the Azure, which is its main component in the intelligent cloud sector, it's had great growth quarter to quarter. So if we're taking a look from each quarter, you see it's rising consistently And then for Q4 2024, there's a slight dip. That's not something that markets want to see as the main product, which has left the stock spooked and why it's dropped after hours. So the market closed at 422.92. If we look at the after hours market after the earnings report dropped, you could see Microsoft dropped all the way down to the 390, 380, 389 area and has continued to base up after hours. This was primarily due to the Azure headlines, as we mentioned, it being down 1%. Now, you may ask yourself, something being down 1% caused this big sell off? To be honest, as I mentioned, yes, to the market, something like this is a big deal. They don't want to see your bread and butter and what you've promised investment in growth to be declining in any aspect. There's always ups and downs in the business, but as you clearly just saw in Microsoft, they're hitting on all cylinders. So this stock selling off from all the way up here and even dropping down to 390 after hours, to me is a buying opportunity. One thing you want to know about Microsoft, this is not a stock that has massive drops. Right now I'm looking at the yearly chart, and if you see, it's very consistent. Small dips, accumulation, and then it's gone. Accumulation, accumulation, and then it starts to run again. Microsoft dropping 10, 15, 20% is not something that happens often. If you look at a 5-year chart, Microsoft is pretty consistent. This was the big drop in 2022. One thing I also want to show you is the moving average. A 200-day moving average is something that is universally known as a pretty safe buying spot on a stock. It's essentially calculating the price over 200 days within a certain time frame. So if we're looking at Microsoft stock on the yearly chart, the 200 moving day average is roughly at 402, this blue line. If we look at Microsoft and zoom out, the last time Microsoft hit this blue line was in January 2022, and it did continue underneath and made lower lows. If we're looking from a big picture, it hit it in 2020 and then 2022, and it looks like we're getting fairly close. So if one thing you want to do is look at this blue line every time it hits it. It hit it in 2018 and it bounced. It hit it in 2016 and bounced. Hit it in 2015 and bounced. So what that means is this 200-day moving average is a pretty good idea of when to buy the stock. Sometimes, yes, it could fall lower, but if you know you buy here and hold for a decent amount of time, 3 to 5 years is my best example, you know that the odds are in your favor based on history. Now, with that being said, the levels on Microsoft that I do like are the 390 area, which it did hit after hours. I do like this 340 area, and I do like this 283 area. I'm not saying any of these numbers are going to come to reality, but what I am saying, these are good areas where you want to be buying the stock. Overall, long term, stocks always go up most of the time. That's the way the market is built, especially if it's a quality stock. So when you see these dips, especially in a stable company like Microsoft, look at each time it hits this blue line. Every time it hits this blue line, a bounce. This one went through a bit more, but then it bounced. So if it hits this line, it may bounce, it could go further. If it does go lower, these are my levels. You want to keep this in mind. And one last thing I'll say is, look at the numbers. As I always say, do your own research. When you see Microsoft falling now and you see all the headlines, pull up the financials. Look at all this green. Revenue is steadily increasing every year. Gross profit is steadily increasing every year. Operating income is steadily increasing every year. Let's look at their cash flow. Their cash flow right now is at 59 billion. That is how much free cash they have to operate and do what they need. This is a solid, strong company. If anything happens, Microsoft has the ability to weather the storm. They have a stable amount of products that consistently grow at a consistent rate. If we're looking at the stock once again, look at this over 5 years. This is steady growth. When you put your money somewhere, you want to know that 1 is safe and 2 is going to grow. Microsoft's a great stock I believe in. Any big dips are buying opportunities in my opinion. With the Azure growth scheduled to slow down slightly, it is something that we want to keep in mind going forward at next earnings, because it's very possible if it comes in decline once again, we could see a deeper sell-off as it did after hours. These are the main levels, as I mentioned, to keep in mind. But as always, do your own research and let me know if there's any other stocks or anything you want me to cover in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share. Thank you for watching.